to AKS. Myself Rachna. In this session, we are going to talk about the budget 2020. So before we get into this budget speech which was given by the finance minister yesterday, let us understand a few basics, how exactly this budget process starts and when and all does the economy survey goes, and few more important terms that will be used in the budget. So mostly here I am referring to textbook of polity in order to understand the terms. So that is why I am naming this part as budget part 0, because as it is regarding the polity aspect of the budget, and then from the part 1 we will continue with the budget analysis. So now let us analyze the bills that are introduced in the parliament. So there are basically 4 categories of bills that are introduced in the parliament, namely ordinary bills, money bill, financial bill, as well as the constitutional amendment bill. Here in this session we are just going to talk about the money bill as well as the financial bill. If we see in brief, these ordinary bills are concerned with any matter other than the financial subjects, whereas the money bill are concerned with the financial matters like taxation, public expenditure, etc. Coming to the financial bills, which are also concerned with the financial matters but are different from the money bill. So firstly, coming to the financial bills, these bills are those bills that deal with the physical matters, right? That is revenue or the expenditure. However, the constitution uses this term called as financial bill in a technical sense. Here there are 3 kinds of financial bills, namely money bill, financial bill 1 and financial bill 2. If we see money bill, it is under the article 110, whereas financial bill comes under the article 117 of one clause, and financial bill 2 is taken up in the article 117.3. So as we have seen 4 types of bills, in that we have seen even money bill as well as the financial bill, ordinary bill and the constitutional amendment. So here I am saying there are 3 kinds of financial bills, and within this financial bills again I have mentioned about the money bill, right? So this classification shows that simply this money bill is nothing but a subspecies within the financial bill. So we can conclude by saying that all the money bills are financial bills, right? But not the otherwise, right? That means not all the financial bills are money bills, because if we see money bill, financial bill 1, 2, 3 are all parts in the financial bills, right? So all the money bills are financial bills, whereas not all financial bills are money bills, right? Because financial bills contains other provisions also, financial bill 1 and 2. So only those financial bills which are mentioned in the article 110 becomes the money bill, and it requires the certification by the Speaker of Lok Sabha as there are money bills, right? On the other hand, if we see this financial bills 1 and 2 are dealt in the article 117. One clause talks about the financial bill 1, whereas the 3rd clause talks about the financial bill 2. So coming to the provisions of the money bill, if we see, so article 110 of the Constitution of India deals with the definition of the money bill. So here it goes on to say that only those provisions dealing with all or any of the following matters are deemed to be the money bill. If we see, there are 7 clauses within in order to get the definition of money bill. The first is the imposition, abolition, remission, alteration as well as regulation of any tax is deemed to be a money bill, and the regulation of borrowing of money by the union government also comes under the money bill, and the custody of Consolidated Fund of India or Contingency Fund of India, the payment of money into these funds or even the withdrawal of the money from such fund will be considered as a money bill. And the 4th one is the appropriation of money out of the consolidated fund. Remember, it is here we are talking about the even Contingency Fund of India. So the custody of this consolidated fund as well as the contingency fund comes under the money bill, whereas the appropriation of money out of the Consolidated Fund of India comes under as money bill. and declaration of any expenditure charged on the Consolidated Fund of India or increasing the amount of any such expenditure also comes as a consideration under the money bill. Now, the sixth point is that the receipt of money on an account of Consolidated Fund of India or public account of India or the custody or issue of such money or the audit of the accounts of the union or of state also are deemed to be the money bill, and any matter incidental to any of the matters specified above are considered as a money bill or the definition under the money bill, right? Now let us see which of the following provisions does not deem to be the money bill. Just because any bill is imposing kind of small fines or any other pecuniary penalties, and the demand or payment of fees for license or fees for services rendered, or the imposition, abolition, remission, alteration or regulation of any tax by the local authority, that is panchayat or the municipalities or any other for local purposes, will not become under the money bill. Again, repeat these sentences. If you see any tax provisions which are related to the local authority does not come under the money bill, whereas the demand or payment of fee for license or any of the services also does not come under money bill, and that imposition of fines or any kind of pecuniary penalties does not come under the definition of money bill. So on the whole, if we see, there can be a quite confusion between the financial bill 1, 2 as well as money bill, because all of them are talking about the finances, right? But yet whenever there is a confusion like that arises between them, then the decision of the speaker, that is of the chairman of the Lok Sabha, if he says that the particular bill is money bill and it can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha, then the decision of the speaker is final in this regard, and that particular bill will be considered as a money bill. Another provision about the money bill is that it can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha. Understand that it cannot be introduced in the Rajya Sabha at all, and it can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha, that too on the recommendation of the president, right? So it is considered to be the government bill because usually only the minister is the one who introduces the money bill in the parliament. A private member cannot introduce a money bill in the parliament. Now because we are here, we are saying that it can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha, then what does Rajya Sabha do? If you come to the powers of the Rajya Sabha regarding the money bill, it cannot reject or amend any money bill. If we see in the case of ordinary bills, usually Rajya Sabha can reject or even amend the ordinary bills. But in this case, Rajya Sabha cannot reject or amend a money bill. But yet it can make few recommendations to the money bill which was sent to them. And these recommendations, the onus is again on the Lok Sabha whether to accept such recommendation or not. If it accepts the recommendation, then it is also okay. If it does not accept the recommendations also, still the power of the Lok Sabha prevails coming to the money bills. Another provision regarding the Rajya Sabha is that they have to return the bill to the Lok Sabha within 14 days. Whether if they are giving the recommendation, whether they are liking it, whether they are not liking it, irrespective of all that, they have to send the bill back within the 14 days. If at all even the Rajya Sabha fails to send back the bill to Lok Sabha, still it is considered to be passed by both the houses, because Rajya Sabha does not have much powers regarding the money bill. So even if it is not sending, after 14 days automatically it will become a bill which is passed by both the houses of the parliament. So understanding the relationship between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha regarding the money bill, as we have seen, it is the Lok Sabha which has an upper hand over the Rajya Sabha coming to the money bill, right? So as I told, a bill will be deemed to be passed if it does not return the bill, if the Rajya Sabha does not return the bill to the Lok Sabha within 14 days, and still the bill will be deemed to be passed if the Lok Sabha accepts the recommendations that were sent by the Rajya Sabha. So in the with the recommendation, it will be like it is passed by the Lok Sabha, and it will be passed by both the houses of the Lok Sabha. even if the Lok Sabha does not accept the recommendations. So on the whole, it is just a gesture that they are showing this money bill to be sent by the to the Raj Sabha. Otherwise, the Raj Sabha has got no power in talking about the money bill. Maybe they can give the recommendations, but acceptance of those recommendations is also not honest on the Lok Sabha. Now we know after both the houses of the parliament approves a bill, it goes to the president's assent. So coming to the president's power regarding the money bill, if we say, he may give his assent to the bill or he may even withhold it. Remember that first I told that a money bill will be introduced in the Lok Sabha only on the recommendations of the president, right? So that is the reason, because this bill was already presented on the recommendation of the president. He cannot usually gives the assent on this recommendations, right? But remember that, but still he can withhold if at all he feels that although on his recommendation this particular money bill was passed or introduced in the Lok Sabha, if the Lok Sabha has changed lot of things also, here he can withhold the money bill by the president. But the constitution is silent for how many days can the president withhold this money bill, or what are the other kind of provisions that the president can do. But yet usually he does not withhold the bill, because on his recommendations only this bill is being introduced in the Lok Sabha. So usually he does not withhold it. But remember that he cannot return it for reconsideration of the House. He can, like the Rajya Sabha, who can just give the recommendations, and to accept the recommendations or not is the onus on the Lok Sabha. In the same way, president cannot return it for reconsideration of the House at all. So these are the provisions about the money bill. The three things we have seen regarding the powers of the Lok Sabha, powers of the Raj Sabha, as well as the president. Now let us see the financial bill 1. So this bill is, like as I told you, it does not contain only the provisions which are mentioned in the 110. We have seen the 7 provisions which are important in order to declare a bill as a money bill, right? So this in financial bill, if we see, it does not only contain the provisions which are mentioned in Article 110, but also it contains matters of general legislation. In that case, we consider it as a financial bill 1. Coming to the similarities as well as the dissimilarities, if we have to appreciate about the money bill and financial bill, if we see the first, let us see the similarities. Both the bills, that is financial bill 1 as well as the money bill, can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha. That too, just like the money bill, only on the recommendation of the president. These two bills can be introduced in the Lok Sabha. Coming to the dissimilarities, as we have seen that Rajya Sabha cannot reject or amend the money bill. It can just give the recommendations. But coming to the financial bill 1, Rajya Sabha can reject or even amend the financial bill 1. And if at all the amendments are not okay with the Lok Sabha regarding the Rajya Sabha's provisions, then they can hold a joint sitting if there is a deadlock over the financial bill. Whereas coming to the money bill, there is no provision of joint sitting at all, because as the Rajya Sabha cannot reject neither amend the money bill. Coming to the president assent, as we have seen it, that in the coming to the money bill, he cannot return for the reconsideration to the bill to the Lok Sabha, but here he may give his assent, withhold, or he can even return the bill for the reconsideration to the Lok Sabha. So these are the dissimilarities that needs to be remembered. It seems like financial bill 1 is a synthesis of both money bill as well as the ordinary bill, as a synthesis of few provisions which are there in the ordinary bill, either for the rejection or amendment of Rajya Sabha, or the joint sitting, and as well as the return of the bill by the president. So financial bill has a synthesis of both money bill as well as the ordinary bill. Now let us see the provisions of the financial bill 2. So financial bill 2 has more and more provisions compared similar to the ordinary bill. It does not even have the synthesis of ordinary bill like that, right? So if we see the speciality of financial bill is that it has been mentioned in the article 117 with clause 3, and it contains the provisions involving the expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India. but it does not include any of the matters related to the Article 110, that is money bill, right? So in this case, usually financial bill 2 is considered as an ordinary bill in all respects. In all respects, you can think what are the provisions that are given to the ordinary bill. The same kind of provisions are available with the financial bill too. So coming to the special feature of this bill is that it cannot be passed by either house of the parliament unless the president has recommended to the house for the consideration of the bill. This is the only special provision compared to the ordinary bill of the about the financial bill 2, that it cannot be passed unless the president has recommended to the house for the consideration of the bill. But if we see, just like any other ordinary bill, it can be introduced in the either house of the parliament, whereas financial bill 1 as well as the money bill could be introduced only in the Lok Sabha, right? So this can be rejected or amended by either house of the parliament. This is more like the financial bill, right? And there is a provision of joint sitting, and president can either give his assent or withhold it, or it can even return the bill for the reconsideration of the houses. So these were the important bills. If we see in our budget, these three types of bills will be usually mentioned. So I hope you're clear with the definitions of money bill, financial bill 1 as well as the financial bill 2. Next, coming to the segment of budget in the parliament, if we see that the budget, the word is never mentioned in our constitution at all. Here they have mentioned under Article 112, they have mentioned it as annual financial statement. But yet the word budget is more famous rather than the annual financial statement. So in this context, we'll be using budget more often than the annual financial statement. Coming to what does the budget contain, if you have heard the yesterday's speech of Nirmala Sitharaman, you will be able to guess what it contains, right? So basically, budget is nothing but the speech when she has made. It is just a statement of the estimated receipts. If you see that she's telling about this much has been received in the tax, that much has we're going to expend on the particular policy and all, right? So this budget is nothing but a statement of estimated receipts as well as the expenditure of Government of India in the financial year. So this statement is very simple, talking about the estimated receipts and the expenditure. Not only that, in addition to this estimated receipts and expenditure, the annual financial statements also contain certain other elements. Here we can divide them into 5 provisions. First, if we can see, it contains the estimates of revenue and as well as the capital receipts, right? As well as the ways and means to raise this particular revenue, and estimates of expenditure, and the details of actual receipts and expenditure of the closing financial year and the reasons for it. That's why we do not say, if we see that before the day of the budget, usually we get to see the economic survey. If we see the economic survey, it is like it will talk about 2019 to 20, right? That is previous year's thing. Whereas the budget, if we see, it comes as a 2020 to 21, right? So that's why this annual financial statement will have the details of actual receipts and expenditure of the closing financial year, and as well as the reasons for any kind of deficit or the surplus if it had happened in that year. And the fifth last provision it will have is the economic as well as financial policy of the coming year. That's what we have seen, how she has talked about next year what the government is going to do, and what are the tax proposals and the prospects of spending on programs, as well as the introduction of new schemes and projects that she has mentioned yesterday. So on the whole, if we see that these are the not only the estimates of revenue and expenditure that is contained in the annual financial statement that is mentioned in the article 112, it also contains this following 5 provisions too. So next, coming to the constitutional provisions regarding the enactment of budget. If you have observed the events that were taking place earlier, right, on the day of when the economic survey was released, we have to first thing that we got to see is the president's address, saying that this year president address is the first address of the decade as well as of the year, right? So in the constitutional provisions, if we see one by one, it is the president who shall, in respect of every financial year, this year it was even the first speech of the decade. So it is the president who shall every financial year cause to be laid before both the houses of the parliament a statement of estimated receipts as well as expenditure of the government of India for that year. But if we see during this time, there will be no demand for grants shall be made except on the recommendations of the president, and no money shall be withdrawn from the Consolidated Fund of India except under appropriations made by the law. And no money bill imposing tax shall be introduced in the parliament except on the recommendations of the president, or such a bill shall not be introduced in the Rajya Sabha. Here they are talking about the money bill that we have just now discussed. So what are the things that the president needs to do when coming to the provisions of the budget are mentioned here. Although these provisions may be looking little lengthier, but the constitution has given only 10 provisions regarding the enactment of the budget. The other one here being that saying no tax shall be levied or collected except by the authority of law, and parliament can reduce. Remember, here I have seen one question like that. So here they say that parliament can reduce or abolish a tax but cannot increase a tax, right? So the seventh provision is that the constitution also defined the relative tools or position of both the houses of the parliament with regard to the enactment of the budget in the following ways. One is the money bill or the finance bill dealing with the taxation cannot be introduced in the Rajya Sabha. It must be introduced in the Lok Sabha. So here they are referring to the financial bill 1, right? So the second is that Rajya Sabha has no power to vote on demands for grants. It is an exclusive privilege of the Lok Sabha. And the third one is that Rajya Sabha should return the money bill or the financial bill 1 to the Lok Sabha within the 14 days. Otherwise, we have seen either it can accept, reject the recommendations which are made by the Rajya Sabha in this regard, and there will not be any kind of joint sitting. So coming to the 8th provision, this estimates of expenditure which are embodied in this budget shall show separately the expenditure charged. See the words, I want you to see the words here. That is the expenditure which is charged on the Consolidated Fund of India and the expenditure made from the Consolidated Fund of India. And the budget shall distinguish between the expenditure on revenue account from that of the expenditure, as well as the last one is that expenditure charged on the Consolidated Fund of India shall not be submitted to the vote of account, and however but yet it can be discussed in the parliament. Now let us see the difference between this expenditure charged on the Consolidated Fund of India as well as the expenditure made from the Consolidated Fund of India. In these two types of expenditure, if we see the charge upon Consolidated Fund of India, as told, it is not votable but it can be discussed, whereas expenditure made from the Consolidated Fund of India is what is voted. Coming to the non-votable of the Consolidated Fund of India, it includes the emoluments as well as the allowances of the president and other expenditure relating to his office. The second one being the salaries and allowances of chairman as well as the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha and the speaker and deputy speaker of Lok Sabha. Salaries, allowances and pensions of the judges of Supreme Court. But remember that even the pensions of the judges of High Court are taken from the Consolidated Fund of India. Coming to the next one, that is salaries, allowances as well as pensions regarding the Controller Auditor General of India, and the same with the chairman and members of the UPSC, and the administrative charges, expenses of the Supreme Court, the above three mentioned, that is Supreme Court and the office of CAG as well as the UPSC, and the debt charges for which the government of India is liable, including like interest or the expenditure related to the rising of loans or the redemption of debt, all is taken from the Consolidated of India, and the sum required to satisfy any judgment or the decree or the award of any court or even the arbitral tribunal. Also, it is charged from the Consolidated Fund of India, and any other expenditure which are declared by the Parliament to be so charged, all this come under the non-votable part of the budget. Next, coming to the stages in the enactment, right? So the first stage here we can see is the presentation of the budget. From here we are starting yesterday how she has given a speech in the Parliament, right? So the coming to the presentation of the budget, if we see, Finance Minister presents a general budget with a speech known as budget speech, and she has broken her own record. Like this year she has given the budget speech for 2 hours 41 minutes, whereas last time it was for 2 hours 17 minutes, right? So this speech is called as budget speech, and in this, if we see, she is bringing the budget in a famous thing ledger called as Bahi Khata. Earlier, as in order to break the British legacy, which used to carry the budget in a suitcase, now they are carrying the budget in the Bahi Khata. So although she has spoken for 2 hours 41 minutes, but we have seen that when the 2 pages were left, she almost concluded the budget because of some medical problem, right? So after that, at the end of the speech in the Lok Sabha, she has gone to the Raj Sabha in order to lay the budget in the Raj Sabha, right? So now here Raj Sabha can only discuss it, and it does not have any power regarding the vote on demands for grants. Just now we have referred to it. After the presentation, now there will be the second stage called as general discussion. In this general discussion will begin a few days after, maybe they are saying it will start by February 7th. So after a few days the presentation, they will start a general discussion. Now this discussion, as told, it will take place in both the houses of the Parliament, and it will last for around 3 to 4 days. And during this stage, the Lok Sabha can discuss the budget as a whole or any question of principle which is involved, but there will be no cut motion can be moved, nor can the budget be submitted to the vote of the House. Here, just as told, the word general discussion they'll take, right? So now here the Finance Minister has a right to reply at the end of the discussion. After that, the House breaks for a certain time, that is after the speech and then general discussion, so that there is an important thing that goes on in the third level, that is the scrutiny by the departmental committees, right? So once this discussion is over, the House is adjourned for about 3 to 4 weeks, and within this 3 to 4 weeks, this 24 departmental standing committees which are present here in the Parliament will examine whatever the things that were told in the budget regarding each ministry, and it will prepare a report on them, and these reports will be submitted to both the houses of the Parliament for consideration. So these standing committees act more like a financial control over the ministries, so that they will bring about a much more detailed, close and in-depth and comprehensive report about the things that were proposed in the recent budget. Coming to the fourth important stage in the presentation of the budget is the voting on demands for grants, right? So we know that especially they do this voting on demands or taking into the consideration of the departmental committees or the scrutiny and the reports that they have given. So it is only the Lok Sabha that takes up the voting on demands for grants, as told earlier, right? So these demands are presented ministry wise. A demand becomes a grant after it has been duly voted by the whole House. The important 2 points to be remembered here is that it is only the Lok Sabha which votes on the voting on demands for grants, and Raj Sabha has got no voting power. And second important thing, as I told, it is they do this voting only on the votable part of the expenditure charged from the Consolidated Fund of India. So I told you during the general discussion, that is during the second stage, right? So there will be nothing called as cut motions and all. Now let us see in detail what are these cut motions, because if we see, each demand that has been made will be voted separately in the Lok Sabha. So during this stage, any MP can discuss the details of the budget. They can also move motions in order to reduce any demand for grant. If a particular ministry has asked for rupees 100 crore, such demand will be properly examined. If they have to cut something like 50 crores or make it into some reduce the amount, such things can be brought about here in this stage, that is fourth stage. So such motions are called as cut motions, and these cut motions are of three kinds. The first one is the policy cut motion. So as the word here it is mentioning policy cut, this kind of shows off the disapproval of the policy itself, which are asking for such type of demanding the money. So here the member can also advocate an alternative policy to the policy which was mentioned earlier. Here usually this demand for grant will be reduced to the rupee 1. So but alternatively they can propose a different policy. Coming to the economic cut motion, here it represents the economy that can be affected in a proposed expenditure. It states that amount of demand is reduced by a specific amount, which may be either lump sum reduction in the demand or an emission or reduction of the item in the demand. So if a policy had 3 to 4 notions or clauses into it, here it can say that completely remove that one clause from the whole policy, or it may say that instead of 100 crores you just take some 80 crores for the policy, or they may even demand or omission or reduction of any kind of item within the demand. Coming to the third cut motion called as token cut motion, this particular motion actually ventilates a specified grievances that is within the sphere of responsibility of the government of India, and here it states that the amount needs to be reduced by 100 rupees. Here this token cut motion will be admissible. In order to admit that itself, it must satisfy the following conditions. One, that it should relate to one demand only, and it should be clearly expressed and should not contain any kind of arguments or the defamatory sentence. Maybe the opposition party or the party which is not liking the present kind of ministry, it can do such type of, it can use as defamatory statements. Such statements should not be used. Here it should be confined only to the one specific matter, just like as a one demand, and it should not make suggestions for the amendment or repeal of the existing laws, and it should not refer to any matters that is not primarily in the concern of the union government, and it should not relate to the expenditure that is charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, and it should not relate to matters that is under adjudication by the court, right? So it should not even raise a question of privilege here, and it should not even revive the discussion on a matter on which decision has already been taken in the same session, and it should not relate to one small matters or the trivial matters as such. So on the whole of all the cut motions that we have seen, economic cut motion to and the policy cut motion, the significance of token cut motion is that it will actually facilitate in the concentration of discussion on a specific demand for grant, and it will uphold the principle of responsible government, because it gives them a chance in order to probe the activities of the government. But yet the cut motions do not have much utility in practice, because they are only moved and discussed in the house, but they are not passed as a government enjoys majority support. If you see now present BJP government, I don't think there will ever be any kind of token cut motion in this present budget, because always it is enjoying the majority, right? So, and their passage by the Lok Sabha amounts to the expression of want of parliamentary confidence in the government, because if at all the cut motion is passed, then it will may even lead to the resignation of the government. So on the whole, if we see 26 days are allotted for this voting on demand on the fourth stage, and on the last stage the speaker, if at all they are unable to conclude the things discussion on the 26 or by the 26 days, whatever the remaining demands to vote and disposes them whether they have been discussed or not by the members. Now this process is called as Gilton, where all the things, the voting for demand things are put it together and declared it as passed. Yesterday we have seen the Nirmala Sitharaman was feeling exhausted, she was not well, and she concluded the budget by saying to the speaker that only two pages are left. So you can still declare it as a budget has been spoken in the House. In the same way, in the Gilton also, what has been discussed and what has not been discussed all together are put for voting. Coming to the last but one phase within the bill, that is passing of the Appropriation Bill, and this constitution states that no money shall be withdrawn from the Consolidated Fund of India except on the appropriation made by the law. Accordingly, appropriation bill is introduced, and so that it will provide for the appropriation out of the Consolidated Fund of India all the money that is required to meet, right? So here it includes grants voted by the Lok Sabha as well as the expenditure charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. But important thing to remember is that there can be no amendment will be proposed at the appropriation bill in either house of the parliament that will have an effect of varying the amount or the altering the destination of the grants voted, or of varying the amount of expenditure which is charged from the Consolidated Fund of India. So here this appropriation bill will become an appropriation act after it is assented by the president as in any other bill, right? So this act authorizes the payment from the Consolidated Fund of India. That means that the government cannot withdraw money from the Consolidated Fund of India till the enactment of this fifth stage we are seeing, where the passing of appropriation bill, and after it is given to president, till the time it becomes the act, they cannot withdraw the money from the Consolidated Fund of India. Coming to the final stage, that is passing of the financial bill, and this bill will be introduced in order to give effect to the financial proposals of the government of India for this following year, right? Now this is subjected to all conditions which are applicable to the money bill. We have seen in money bill there will be not joint setting and it can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha, and unlike the appropriation bill, the amendments seeking to reject or reduce the tax can be moved in case of this financial bill. So finally, this Finance Act legalizes the income side of the budget and it completes the process of the enactment of the budget. So this should end the process of the budget, but yet in addition to the budget that contains the ordinary estimates of income as well as expenditure, but yet there are various other grants which are made by the parliament, especially in order to overcome the extraordinary as well as the special circumstances. Let us discuss the special enactments in detail. So the first one here is supplementary grant. It is granted when the amount authorized, if the particular parliament has authorized a particular ministry for say some 100 rupees through the Appropriation Act for a particular service, but yet in the current financial year it is finding that 100 rupees as insufficient for that year. Now it can grant the supplementary grant in order to substantiate that demand. The second one being the additional grant. This grant is granted when a need has arisen, especially in this current financial year, for additional expenditure by a particular ministry, if at all they are bringing about kind of new service which was not completed in the budget for that year. During that period, they will give an additional grant for the new service which was not completed. Coming to the third one called as excess grant. If the granted when money has been spent on any service during the financial year in excess of the amount granted to the service in the budget for that year, it is voted, this excess grant will be voted in the Lok Sabha after the financial year. Say if it was like in 2020 to 21, if they have given around 10,000 rupees for a particular ministry and they have actually exceeded the grant that was given to the particular ministry. Now whatever that excess money they have spent, that particular part will be voted in the Lok Sabha after the financial year. So before the demands for excess grants are submitted to the Lok Sabha for voting, this particular excess grants should also be approved by the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament, saying that the excess amount what has been taken by this particular ministry was spent appropriately for a particular reason. Coming to the fourth one, very important one called as the vote on credit. Now this is a grant in order to meet the unexpected demand upon the resources of India. So it is during the when there is a magnitude or the indefinite character of service is demanded, or the demand cannot be stated with the details ordinarily in the given budget, during that time they will do this vote on credit for in order to meet this unexpected demand, right? So hence it is like a blank check given to the executive by the Lok Sabha if at all any kind of sudden things happen, so that the executive can meet such type of demands. Coming to the fifth one, exceptional grant. It is granted for a special purpose, as the name is here itself is mentioning, and it forms no part in the current service of the any kind of financial year. During that time this exceptional grant is given. And the last one is the token grant. It is granted when the funds to meet the proposed expenditure on a new service can be made available by reappropriation. So example here we can take, like if a demand for a grant of token sum of say ₹1 rupee has been asked, and if at all submitted to the vote of the Lok Sabha, and if at all it gets the assent, as well as funds here will be made re-available. So this is kind of reappropriation here involves transfer of funds from one to another, but yet it does not involve any kind of additional expenditure. So coming to all this, the grants that we have spoken, including the supplementary, additional, excess, votes of credit, exceptional, as well as the token, they will have to undergo the same kind of procedure which are applicable in the case of general budget. So these were the important basics that we had to know before we discuss about the budget. So coming will be the part 1 and part 2 of the budget speech which will be discussed very elaborately.